Hello, hello, and welcome back to MoJo JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, the one and only Powerpuff Girl slash JoJo's Bizarre Adventure recap and discussion podcast. I'm Raven.
And I'm Alison.
Today we'll be discussing the JoJo episodes Sorrowful Successor and Bloody Battle, JoJo and Dio. Before we start talking about the episodes, though, because I forgot to look up Bluford and Tarukas last time, here is what I have learned about them. They were not actual knights or anything. Bruford is named after Bill Bruford, the drummer of Yes and King Crimson. Tarkus slash Tarukas is named after an Emerson, Lake and Palmer album of the same name, and Tarkus is also a song on the album. It's like this, I think Tarkus is like this little armadillo creature or something in the album.
Interesting. I was thinking I don't remember knights like that associated with those queens, but it might have been something that happened, but they just didn't make it a big deal.
I mean, that she had like some very loyal knights seemed plausible, but like the part where it's like, and he was so angry that his neck was hard to chop through and his hair like strangled or slashed the executioner. I was like, those are obviously exaggerations, but I thought maybe it was just more like some sort of like legend or myth or something.
I mean, I think there were some people whose heads were really hard to chop off, though.
Yeah, there probably were. But yeah, I just wanted to make note of that since I forgot last time.
Okay, so the first episode, Sorrowful Successor, it starts out in 1863. Zeppeli has trained with Ton Petty for 3 years and is moving into more intense training called the Celestial Gate. Ton Petty warns now is the time to turn back. Zeppeli wants to know when he will die. He thinks there is a purpose to his life. They join hands and Ton Petty tells his destiny. Back to current time, Zeppeli intends to unchain JoJo. Tarukas wants them to come closer and says their Haman won't work. Zeppeli comes at them with Tornado Overdrive! Tarukas gets Zeppeli tied up in the chain and he can't breathe and can't use the Haman because he can't breathe. Tarukas pulls harder and Zeppeli is cut in half by the chain. Tarukas declares both JoJo and Zeppeli dead, but JoJo is still alive with a broken neck. Zeppeli's top half grabs JoJo's hand. Ultimate Deep Pass Overdrive! And passes all his Haman to JoJo. Speedwagon mourns Zeppeli. Tarukas is lifted off the ground by the chain by the newly buffed JoJo. JoJo rips the chain collar from his neck. He cuts off Tarukas's arm. JoJo's Haman is visible like waves of heat. Tarukas spits teeth at him. I think that's what happened. He spit something at him. It looked like it was his teeth.
I guess I just remember that.
JoJo punches Tarukas's head and his body disintegrates. Only the armor is left behind. Zeppeli is all old and gray. JoJo doesn't think he can go on alone. Zeppeli implores him to destroy the mask. Zeppeli feels he has fulfilled his destiny. They burn Zeppeli's body. So the episode goes to Dio. There's a woman holding a baby and he wants to turn the woman and she keeps asking him to spare her baby, and so he turns her into a vampire and then she ends up eating her own baby. Okay, and then back to JoJo. JoJo and Speedwagon and Poco approach the town and they're just kind of worried, will anyone still be alive? Poco finds Mr. Adams and asks about his sister. He says she is furious, but Mr. Adams has turned and tries to go after them with his super long tongue. JoJo kills him. They meet Dyer. Thunder split attack! But JoJo stops him with a headbutt. Dyer knows Zeppeli. Straizo also shows up and has a letter from Zeppeli. Is that his name?
Yes, Straizo.
Straizo. Zeppeli had written to them to tell them where the mask was. Then Ton Petty shows up. He wants to bow with praying hands. He knows Zeppeli is dead and says Dio has extraordinary strength. And then they kind of show like Coco's sister. So It looks like she may be alive, and that's the end of the episode.
So I guess what I want to point out, I don't know if I got this completely correct, the wording, the prophecy that Tom Petty tells Zeppeli is that he will die in a chamber reeking of death that will be opened by a young child to unchain a young lion and release him into the future that is his destiny. The first part might not be completely accurate, but that's the gist of the prophecy that he was given.
It sounds like it.
And then also Zeppeli mentioned that before he learned Haman, he was happily married and he had to choose between his family and learning Haman, but he never regretted the decision to learn Haman instead.
Yes, I don't know if we really find out what happened to his family. Maybe they'll pop up at some point.
Maybe we don't really know at this point what occurs with the Zeppeli family.
I'm not really sure why after being cut in half, like Zeppeli is he's just like hanging on forever.
I know he hung on for so much longer than I remembered even.
He kind of passed his Haman on, so it wasn't just the Haman, I guess, keeping him alive either.
Yeah. And not only was he cut in half, but like his right arm was cut off too. So like, that's so much blood loss.
He's super determined.
All right. So I guess I'm going to start talking about the second episode, Bloody Battle, JoJo and Dio. JoJo and Ko go to Poco's house. Poco's dad slaps him for having been out so late, and Poco asks where his sister is, and his dad says that she went out looking for Poco. Poco wails, knowing she must be out there with all the zombie thralls. Dio has some creepy dog men. They have, like, dog bodies and human heads. Dio tries to tempt Poco's sister with immortality. The creepy dogman is extra creepy about her, and Dio kills him. She slaps Dio for his suggestion, and Dio sicks the creature Doobie upon her. JoJo throws something at Doobie from above and leaps down to fight him. Doobie has snakes coming out of his face under his mask, and JoJo grabs the serpents. Dyer is impressed. JoJo kills Doobie, and Poco is reunited with his sister, whose name we never learn. Dio climbs further into the mansion, and JoJo confronts him. Dio is unimpressed but annoyed that JoJo took out the knights. Dio says he'll take no pleasure in this battle because they grew up together and hoped the knights would kill him quickly. He also mocks JoJo for Zeppeli's loss. JoJo says it pains him as a gentleman to admit it, but he hates Dio. Dio taunts JoJo, but Dyer wants to fight him as vengeance for Zeppeli's death. JoJo warns him that he's not prepared for Dio's abilities, but Dyer ignores him. Dyer goes to smack Dio on the top of the head with Haman, but Dio grabs him and freezes Dyer's entire body. He shatters Dyer, who is now but a head. Dyer's head lands into a thing of roses. He spits a Haman-filled rose at Dio, and then his head shatters. And, like, the thorns get in Dio's eye, and then can't see out of it very well. And so JoJo has advantage because of that. JoJo fills the sword luck/pluck with Haman and prepares to attack Dio. Dio says Haman is more disgusting than frog piss. He gets ready to sick his zombies on JoJo, but Straitso comes out and defeats 4 of them. Tom Petty volunteers to get the rest of the zombies. JoJo and Dio finally fight. JoJo throws roses at Dio as a distraction, and JoJo is able to cut Dio's hand off and slice Dio down the middle of his head and body. Dio freezes JoJo. Dio has a hold of JoJo's carotid artery. He intends to turn JoJo into one of his minions. Dio gloats, but JoJo has a plan. Because Dio only partially froze JoJo to feed off of him, he can still use his Haman, and he sends Haman into the sword, which is still stuck in Dio, and is also in a flaming brazier behind Dio. The Haman didn't fully send its way through Dio's body, though, and he's able to reattach his arm and fix his head. He breaks the sword and freezes JoJo's arm. To counteract the freezing and save his arm, JoJo puts it in the fire and hits Dio with Haman, which begins to destroy Dio's body. Dio falls and begins to disintegrate, but sends a beam out of his eyes at JoJo, narrowly missing JoJo's head. Even as evil as Dio was, they grew up together, and JoJo still mourns him. He collapses from exhaustion, having defeated Dio at long last.
Maybe. My bizarre prediction was that Dio will take over Poco's body. JoJo, where's my new body? Like, besides having dogmen, I thought there was a cat bird also.
Yes, there was. I forgot about that.
Okay. When Dio was starting to get cut in half, he almost looked like he was lava inside.
Yeah, I'm not sure that's ever really explained why the vampires are like that, or if it's just like, or if it is in fact it has to do with the vampirism and has to do with maybe the Hamon being sent through him. I'm not totally sure. It was just, these two episodes were mainly like fights, a lot of it, and there wasn't a lot to go on other than just like, and then they fought, and then they did this in the fight.
Yeah.
So that just there's less to discuss when we just get that little going on. Not that the fights aren't that much going on, but just like not as much to discuss.
And there were new characters introduced, but because they just kind of immediately went to fighting, we still don't really know much about him. Like Poco's sister, and then the people that showed up with Tom Petty.
Yeah.
Well, the one guy's dead, right?
Yeah, Dyer is
Dyer,
dead. Straight so is still alive.
So, like, maybe the next couple episodes we'll find out more about everyone.
Yeah.
If they get a reprieve from Dio.
So the next two episodes that we will be talking about is going to be the first episode of part 2 and the last episode of part 1. So this is we're pretty close to the end of this first story, and it only gets weirder and weirder from here. The funny thing is actually most of the spoilers I knew about before watching JoJo are more like from part 4 onwards. So I actually didn't even know about the vampires or the Hamon or anything. None of that was spoiled for me. So I got in there and it's like I had zero idea.
Yeah, I didn't. I guess I did not really know what to expect from this show. But I wasn't expecting vampires.
Yeah. I will say though, part 2 is probably my least favorite part. Just based on a lot of it has aged like really poorly. And you'll see why when we get in there.
Good Lord.
Yeah. I really don't think that it would have been written like that if Iraqi had written it these days instead, but it's like, get in there and it's like, oh lovely. I mean, the other aspects of it are still very fun and entertaining, but that just kind of, the more problematic aspects kind of just leave like a sour taste in your mouth and just like, yeah. And then when we get to part 3, we'll be chopping that in half because it's basically 2 seasons in one. So we'll have like a little break in there because it's probably like I want to say it's like 26 episodes each of the first season of part 3 and then 26 episodes of part 2. So it's like 52 episodes.
What the heck?
It's the longest part that has been animated. I believe like part 8 or 9, not part 9. Part 9 is what Iraqi is working on right now. I believe part 8 is actually the longest part because Iraqi worked on it for like 10 years. But we won't be seeing that animated for probably a little bit now because we don't even have part 7 confirmed yet. Yeah, I guess that's really all I have to say about these episodes. Tune in next week when we talk about the final ripple and New York's JoJo. Depending on what platforms you're listening to this on, it would be super great if we could get like a follow or subscribe. Would love to see some reviews. Those are always very helpful. If you're watching/listening to this later on YouTube, hit that like and subscribe button. Leave a comment if you're feeling generous. Until next time, I'll be the roundabout. Goodbye.
Goodbye.